When I started airline flight training, I thought it would be like university. I couldn't have been more wrong. It turned out to be one of the most toughest, most challenging, yet most rewarding things of my entire life. Looking back now, I can't believe how far I have come. Hi everyone, I'm Elliot and welcome to the first episode of my flight school series. Over the next few videos, I'm going to be taking you through my journey through flight school from all the way back in ground school, all the way up until airline training and beyond. So stick around and find out exactly what happens during airline training and all the things that flight schools don't tell you. There are 6 main phases to flight training. However, in today's episode, we're going to be starting off right at the beginning, and we'll be starting off with ground school. Now, in today's episode, we're going to discuss what is ground school, what happens, and all the things I wish someone had told me before I had started ground school. This might be one of the toughest sections of the entire flight training, so stick around and find out exactly what happens next. Right, so before you even start flight school, there are a few entry requirements which you will need. Firstly, you will need GCSEs or equivalent at a C grade or pass level and above in maths, science, and English. Another thing you will need is to have passed a assessment day to your chosen flight school, which include aptitude tests and technical tests, and also an interview. You'll also need a Class 1 medical. Personally, I'd recommend getting this after your assessment day into your chosen flight school, as they are pretty expensive and you don't want to be investing your money before you've even been accepted and got a start date. However, you will need this before you start. So once you've got accepted, make sure you go and get your Class 1 medical done. There are various centres around the UK that will do it. However, there are a limited number for the initial Class 1 as it's a much more thorough and rigorous assessment. And it basically just makes sure you're up to standards in terms of your health and fitness and able to fly for commercial operations. Now, there are 2 main routes that you can go about to become an airline pilot. The first route, which I chose, was the integrated route, and the second route is the modular route. So the integrated route, you will train with a singular flight school. It's a very well structured, full-time course, and they basically take you all the way from the start to the end, where you will then join the airlines, and they will prepare you very, very well for your first airline job. Now, the second route is the modular route. This is where you will find different flight schools by yourself and take each stage individually. You go at your own pace and you pay the money as you go. It's a little bit cheaper than the integrated, but takes quite a lot longer. Also, with the integrated route, if you do go, each flight schools have ties and connections to the airlines. Once you finish, you'll be placed in a holding pool, and then you can be selected for your application to be sent to the airlines. One thing the modular doesn't give you. Now, that doesn't mean that the modular route can't get you to the airlines. It absolutely can. However, once you have finished your licenses, you're sort of on your own a little bit, so you will have to apply separately without the aid of a designated training company. Now, before even starting flight training, there are a few things that I did to best prepare myself to start. Now, by no means are these essential. However, in my opinion, they are very, very good for setting up nicely from the start of your flight training all the way out until the end for the entire thing. So 2 of the things that I did before was I took A-levels, and out of my 3 choices, one of them was maths and one of them was physics. Now, you absolutely don't need these whatsoever. However, especially during the ground school phase and also some of the practical flying, it will very much help in terms of some of the calculations you have to do for the exams and also in the real aircraft. And just that sort of mental maths really does you get a lot of benefit from doing those subjects at A-levels, so that was one thing that I did. The second thing I did was, ever since I was a kid, getting my hands on one of the first flight simulators on the iPad, on a mobile flight sim. all the way up until I got older and started using more professional flight sims such as X-Plane 11, which I started out on, and then Microsoft 2020, and then also X-Plane 12. Now, I've done hundreds and hundreds of hours on these, studying systems and getting used to hand flying and also automated systems, and just a nice broad overview picture of everything, and getting used to these sort of skills that will come out during your flight training at one stage or another. Now, it's absolutely not essential, but I would recommend this one in particular that you take the time and spend a little bit of money doing leading up to you starting flight training. It'll get you used to aircraft, used to systems, but it'll also, for me, it sparked my interest, 100-fold from when I first wanted to be a pilot, and it really gets you in that mindset that you'll need for when you go through your flight training and into your career. Alright, so you've chosen a flight school, you've passed all the assessments, you've got your Class 1 medical, and you're ready to start. So what actually happens? So, a little bit before you start, you'll be sent a lot of emails detailing outlines for the course, what you'll need to bring, and there'll be things such as the uniform, the dress code, which will initially just be a white shirt and trousers. Before, with your flight school, you will get your proper uniform. You'll get forms to fill out such as your size for the uniform. They will describe things that you should have setting up account-wise, so you'll be setting up accounts for things such as your online logbook accounts, logging all your lessons, and also when you start your flights, and other things that you will learn from, such as Pad Pilot and a bunch of other resources. They'll send you all the information you need, company email that you fill in, and you set up all your accounts. Then if you've got accommodation included, you'll be sent the accommodation details for you to move in the day before. So for me, this was a nice student accommodation, single flat, basically a studio apartment type thing. So it's got a bed, a little kitchen, and a small desk for you to work out, and a bathroom, all included. Now, for me, the accommodation actually wasn't prepared yet for us, so for the first week we were sent to a Premier Inn just down the road. Now, it wasn't too bad, however, the only problem is Premier Inn, as you may know, there's no cooking facilities, unfortunately, so we had to be on sandwiches and stuff for a week. The accommodation was quite close actually to the training centre, only about a 10-minute walk, and my flight school in particular doesn't provide transport during the ground school phase. Now, later on they would, but we'll get to that all in good time. So, day one, we're in the Premier Inn. We had a 10 o'clock start in the morning, got a nice lie-in, got into our uniform, and we went to the training centre. Now, few of us met up beforehand the night before when we all moved into the Premier Inn, as some people were actually in the accommodation already and some of us were in the hotel. But once we arrived at the training centre outside, we all met up. Now, it was clear everyone was a bit nervous and didn't know what on earth was going on, so we were just waiting outside, all of us together, until our instructor came to get us. Now, initially, they walk you around the facilities, they show you everything, including the massive simulators, which is actually really exciting, and you'll want to go on one immediately. They're one of the massive ones on hydraulic legs, and you will want to go on one. Unfortunately for us, we weren't allowed to see it, but it is very cool walking past, the line of them, all, being used by people who have completing their flight training or with the airlines. So that was really cool to see. We got shown the canteen, the cafeteria, the fire alarm procedure, all your standard stuff. And then once we'd done that, we went into the classroom and we actually got to pick our own seats. So that was quite nice. And we wrote little names on name tags and put them on the desk so we could learn each other's names, as there was quite a lot of us actually. There was 30 of us initially. Half the class was UK students and the other half were the ANA cadets from Japan. So initially, they basically ran us through exactly what would happen during the ground school section of the course, and then also sort of ran us through a little bit what would happen after ground school. Now, the course for us, because it's the integrated course, there we have no breaks. We have Monday through Friday, 8 till 4 p.m. So standard day, and we would have one subject per day. So there are 13 subjects. and the whole 6 to 7 months of ground school was split into 3 modules, 3 mods. So the first mod we had was split into 4 subjects, second mod was 4 subjects, and the final mod was 5 subjects. Now, each flight school may differ in the arrangement of which subjects you do in which mod, so that will be, you'll find that out on the day that you arrive. Now, as part of the course, they also ran alongside it the university degree program. Now, some people were on this, some people weren't, so they went at the end and had an additional sort of chat to talk through what they would be doing. But it's basically an extra year on top of the course to finish a university degree. Now, I didn't go about doing this as it's a little bit more expensive and it's another year, like I said, so if you want to find more about that, then email your flight school directly to ask before you start. Now, also on the first day, we went around and did a couple little group exercises just to get us familiar with each other and also sort of learn each other's names, backgrounds, where we're from. So we were split up into groups and we had to basically write down about someone and then in front of everyone just talk about that other person that we were given to talk about. So if you're anything like me and you never remember anyone's name on the first time, then this was actually a great exercise to learn them properly. And that was pretty much it for the first day. It was a nice half day. It was around 11 till 2 or 3 o'clock. Once we'd got started and were leaving, and once we were leaving, we were all given a flight bag. So this included the stuff we'd need for ground school. In it had things such as, your ruler, your protractors, things such as your first set of notes that you would need to start learning for the subjects the following day. It also included your calculator and what we call the book of spells, which is actually the Jefferson charts that we'll be using for things such as flight planning and also GNAV and things like that. And it's a massive book full of charts and approach plates and departure plates and things like that. And it's in a nice big leather case, so it's quite an impressive book. It's quite heavy and you will be using it. And then the thing everybody, well, not everyone, but most people dislike, we get the famous CRP5. Now, this is a computer, effectively. It's a manual computer that you'll be using quite a lot during your exams, and it's fairly straightforward with a lot of things that aren't straightforward. Some people, well, most people I think hate it, and some people absolutely love it. I hated it at the start, but towards the end I grew quite fond of it. Once you start getting questions right, you start to like it. So it does take a little bit to learn, but that was quite cool because I'd never seen one of those before, and yeah, it was pretty exciting. So that pretty much concluded the first day. That night we all went to the pub, checking out all the local spots, and had quite a good time before we were ready for day 2, the first day of our actual learning. So starting off then, for our first subjects, we got introduced to our timetable and all our instructors. Now, the instructors make it very interesting. Now, for each lesson, the instructor will be standing at the front teaching you off the PowerPoints and also using their personal experiences as well to link what's on the slides to real life, which I thought was really, really nice. Also as well, some of the instructors will take you to some of the different rooms where they've got, for example, an engine or some different parts or something to show you so you can practically see what it is you're looking at. Now here are some video clips as well of also things that they brought into the classroom for us to have a look at, including bits of airplane and whatnot here and there. We get access to all the PowerPoints so you can go home afterwards and also look ahead to the next day to keep learning and keep revising, as everything comes very, very quickly. You'll be given information so fast that you blink and you're already 10 slides down the line. You haven't even finished writing out, what you're just doing on 10 slides previous. So my advice would be to listen to the instructors, make notes, but don't start writing out paragraphs. Make notes of the important bits, highlight in the PowerPoint things, and then when you go home, either make your own notes and summarize it all into sheets, or I don't know what else you could do, just go back through it and learn from what you highlighted and wrote down, I guess. But most of us wrote our own notes, and that's actually one guy on my course who covered his entire walls with A4 pieces of paper and sticky notes, which was quite cool. I, for one, can't do that, but fair play to him. He's done very well at that. For me, I just wrote my own little notes on my iPad and had the PowerPoint on one half, notebook on the other, and just wrote down the main points that I would need. Now, the content of the stuff you'll learn, most of it's not that hard. It's hard in the sense that you get thousands upon thousands of slides within a very, very short period of time. It's the way they described it when we got there was the amount of work you'll be doing is like doing a university degree, a 3-year course, but the amount of content that covers, but instead of 3 years, it's in 6 months. So it's a lot of information, not as hard in some cases, but it's hard in the sense that it's overwhelming. I think in total, I counted up, there's probably around 25,000 PowerPoint slides over the 13 subjects within the 6 months that we get. Now, one of the things you're given to revise is a thing called PadPilot. Now, it's alright, I don't hate it. It's good for learning concepts and some of the definitions, some of the theories and things like that. However, it's not what's going to come up in the exams exactly. Now, the thing with the exams, they're very, very specific. Each exam has a set number of questions that quite often you'll see a fair amount of them come up. Now, they're very specifically worded, and the answers, some of the answers you would think are correct, it's actually the other answer. So you've really got to learn what answers the exam wants, not maybe what's the most obvious answer. So the tool we all use for this is the beloved ATPL question banks. So ATPL question bank, it's got all the questions that have ever come up pretty much in the exams so far. They make new questions every year, but most of them you'll find on there. And it's from people who have gone in the exam and remembered the question and wrote it down. This means they're not 100% accurate. So bear that in mind. They're not the answers. They're just questions that people have seen and wrote down the answers for. So most of them are pretty good. However, do not trust this 100%. The most common revision tactic then is to use these question banks and to basically learn the answers from there, which I did as well as everybody else pretty much. I use this alongside my technical stuff from the PowerPoints I've written down to figure out what was what. Now, one caveat to this, for the exams that require calculations and numbers, I did not use the question banks to memorize answers and to learn the answers that way. For these, I can't memorize numbers like that for every single question. So I learned from the PowerPoints the actual method to these questions, especially every year as they can change one number and the answer is completely different. So do not rely on this to learn the questions for all the numbers and stuff. For definitions, brilliant. For concepts and other answers like that, very, very good. You might see a question in the bank and you know the answer. You'll see a question that's similar in the exam and you can have a pretty good guess at what the answer is. You can know what the answer is because it's a similar concept to the original question. Now, I'm aware that the exam board are doing their best to get rid of this because it's not the best way to learn. I also kind of agree with them a little bit because it's very controversial, I know, but because when you come out of flight school, if you've banked your way through the whole ground school, you're going to find it very tricky for when you come to airline assessments to pass the theory side of things because you'll need to know all the theory from ATPLs, not just the bank answers. So you actually do need to learn the content and remember it and keep revising it all the way through your flight training. So when you do get to the airline assessments, you know what you're talking about. This is a big, big thing where people don't do this and they get to the airline assessments and they fail because they don't know what they're talking about. They just remember what they did on the bank and not the actual concepts and theories behind the questions. So this is a very big point. I'm taking my time to talk about this because it's very, very important. Okay, another big topic then. You're going to be thinking to yourself, do we get vacation? In short, no, we do not get vacation or holiday time. This course runs pretty much 24/7. Wherever you have days off during ground school, you're revising pretty much. Take a time. For us, we took off Friday night. Take time off Friday night. Go out to the pub with your mates. Have a great time. The rest of the time you will be studying. You will not have a personal life pretty much outside of ground school. It's that intense if you want to succeed and get first-time passes at everything. So be aware of that. Now, you might be thinking, what about Christmas, Easter, summer, vacation, half terms, bank holidays? No, we don't get any of that off. We did get, in ground school actually, we did get a week for Christmas, but that wasn't originally scheduled in our timetable. But we luckily managed to get off a week at Christmas. However, that was the only Christmas we got off for the entire course, and apart from that, it is straight for the whole 18 months plus. Even when we were in the US, on the 4th of July, we were still flying, which I'm not complaining about. I had amazing fun flying in the US, especially 4th of July, we see all the fireworks as well. I managed to get a night flight that night, so that was really, really cool. And seeing all the fireworks going around, that was spectacular. So ground school will feel like it takes an eternity to pass by. However, I promise you, it does end. And as bad as people say it is, now that I've finished it, I do quite miss it. I don't miss the intensity of the work and the long nights and the early mornings and just the sheer amount of volume that we were given to study. But I did enjoy the topics, and I had a lot of fun with the friends that I made there, and I'm still friends with them now. I've gone through the whole course with them pretty much, and we're all still great friends after that. So it was an amazing time, and I wouldn't say I'd go back and do it all again, but realistically I would. So that's it was an experience, let's just say that. Now, one more point I just want to make here is the pass mark. I actually didn't mention this for the exam. The pass mark for all exams individually is 75% or above. Now, if you fail this, then you will have options to retake the exam in the next mod or at the end of the course, which just adds on time to your training, which is not what you want. So obviously try and pass them first time. But if you do fail one, don't worry. If you fail a couple, you can retake. However, if you do fail too many, then you will be potentially kicked off of the course. We lost pretty much half the class by the end of ground school, so beware of that. You do have to put in the time to study. Now, when it comes to applying for airlines, most airlines that I know of, except one or two, require you to have 85% average over all 13 subjects put together or above, and no more than 2 or 3 fails of an exam or retakes, depending on which airline you apply for. So beware of that. It will really restrict you if you are below the airline requirements to get a job. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up for this first episode. We'll continue talking about a couple of some cool stories we had during ground school. So don't forget to check out that episode, which will be coming next. But hopefully that has some information that you guys can learn from. And if you do have any questions, then please put your questions down in the comments and I will make sure that I answer them for you. So thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you learned something, and hope you enjoyed the video as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.